start by asking you a question. Do you suffer from way too much appreciation? People coming up to you all the time and saying, thank you so much for the amazing work you do. I so appreciate the efforts that you do. You totally rock. No? No? Okay, I know what some of you are saying. You are saying, you know what, Lisa? Anytime I am suffering from anything, I do what the rest of the country does, and I go and self-diagnose on WebMD. So let's take a look at some of the signs that you may be suffering from poor workplace culture. First one, when you walk through your facility, are people smiling or are you seeing a lot of grouchy, cranky faces? You know, we've all felt it in that you can feel culture. You know that when people like working for you, you know that you don't. You go to a restaurant, you go anywhere, and you can tell that employees are engaged or not. Maybe you're seeing a lot of frustration going on. I mean, the last 2 years have been pretty interesting, shall we say. Maybe you're seeing that turnover, and that's why my retention talks are getting so much attention right now. Because the fact that, oh, we can't find workers, I can't keep workers, I can't pay workers enough, all of those things. Maybe you're seeing some internal struggles between employees. Maybe because you have people working remote, people working on site, people working hybrid, or you just don't know where the heck they're working. People are either coming in late, or maybe they're not showing up at all. They don't feel rewarded, they don't feel recognized. Or maybe because you're so short-staffed right now, people are putting in extra hours, which could be leading to burnout. And finally, you have silos where departments just aren't talking to each other. Well, if you have any of these things going on, the good news is you are in the right place. Because this has led to a lot of stress. And so in our time together, we're going to look at some ways that we can start to create that culture and just get back to where we want to be, back to the good old days, in 2019. Because again, absenteeism, turnover, we don't have to talk about supply chain, the COVID, all of that. But what if in our 90 or so minutes together, that you walked out of here with some strategies that you will implement? We want to create that new workplace reality. So you might be saying, you know what, Lisa, you have no idea what I'm going through. I mean, really, with the supply chain issues and the worker shortage and everything, I mean, look at what you get to do. I mean, you're a speaker and you go across the country and you talk about all these things, whether it be live, in person, virtual. I mean, all people have to do is say your name and people clap. And I have to say, it's pretty cool. But I want you to feel what that feels like. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to have you on this side of the room stand up. Stand up, come on, work with me here, people. You're going to look at the people on the other side of the room. Take a good look at them. Can you say, holy cow, I can't believe I am in the same room with these rock stars, breathing the same oxygen. They are absolute total rock stars. Thank you so much for being in this industry. I want you to look at those people and give them the loudest standing ovation you have ever given anybody. Look, listen to you. Guess what? It's your turn to stand up. Look at the people on the other side of the room and say, oh my goodness gracious. I can't believe I'm breathing the same oxygen as these total rock stars in this room. I want you to look at the people on this side of the room and give them the loudest standing ovation you have ever given anybody. All right, now everybody stand up. Because you know what? We were supposed to be together in 2020. We were supposed to be together in 2021, but it is 2022, and we are together again. So let's give it up for SGCD. See, that was your exercise for this morning. So think about what just happened. It felt pretty good to get that applause, right? Even if you had to kind of imagine, like, yeah, this is just a thing. No, but if you really felt it, it felt good to be recognized by your peers with that standing ovation, didn't it? It probably felt a little better when you got to give the appreciation to the other group, though, right? Because sometimes when it comes to us accepting that level of appreciation, we want to be humble. We're like, okay, that's fine. But when we give it to others, that's even better. But then when we as a group celebrate together, that's the best. And that's all it comes down to in the workplace. To create the type of culture that people can get appreciation, that they can give appreciation, and that we can all celebrate together. So I want you to think back of your first day in the glass and ceramic decorating industry. You might be saying, Lisa, I don't even remember what I had for lunch last week, much less my first day in the industry. Again, work with me. Think back. You're looking around going, did I make the right decision? Am I going to like these people? Am I going to like the company mission? Am I going to like my coworkers? But there was something about the industry that kept you. But it was probably that company culture that kept you in the industry. I remember my first day in the industry. I was in the welding industry, and it was my very first day. I was the only woman in this room full of guys, and I'm looking around going, what in the world was I thinking? I mean, I knew what a weld was, because of course I'm from Northeast Ohio, and when you're from Northeast Ohio, you go to Cedar Point Amusement Park, roller coaster capital of the world, and I knew that the welds were the things that held the roller coasters together. But that was pretty much about it. So how did they get there? No idea. So I'm looking around, feeling silly, and then we started with all the training, and we went through the different processes, MIG, TIG, and stick, and we learned how to join dissimilar metals, and we learned all of those things. But it wasn't until I struck my first arc, and I saw that red molten metal starting to join those two pieces of metal together. And I smelled that very distinctive weld smell. And if you're not familiar with it, think the 4th of July and lots of fireworks. And then at the end, when I took up my helmet and took that chipping hammer, chipped away the slag to see, did I make a beautiful bead or not? It was the industry that brought me in, because I loved the welding industry. But it was my boss and the culture that kept me. And out of all the jobs that I've had, that was still by far my favorite. Because that's what I love about being in manufacturing and being around industry, because I'm surrounded by passionate people who are passionate about things that most people don't think about. So in the welding industry, I got to see how things were made, auto plants and steel mills, and going into the salt mine. Now think about the salt mine, a couple of things about that. Number one, 4-minute elevator ride in the dark. I, of course, kept my lantern on. Then you go down there, and there's a couple things that you should know. Number one, don't go on a tour with the new guy. Then we got lost, which is really terrifying when you think that Lake Erie is your ceiling. The other thing you should know about being in the salt mine is that they give you this little metal tag with a number on it. Any idea what that is? Yeah, that is your remains identification tag. So it's a little terrifying, but still, just to have these types of cool experience. Now you might be saying, Lisa, what in the world does welding have to do with employee retention, for goodness sake? It has everything. Because if you were to think of that brand new employee as one piece of metal, and your company as the other piece of metal, that alloy, that piece of metal that joins them together, that is everything else. That's your company culture, that's your leadership team, that's your company mission. It's everything else. When fusion happens, it's a beautiful bead. that's when you have those employees that they're not going to go down the street for 50 cents more an hour. That you are good when they are in front of your customers. You like that because customers love them. Their coworkers love being around them. They are your rock stars. They are your productive people. You are actually paying them less money than the value that they're bringing to your business. But on the other hand, when fusion doesn't happen, I could probably break that weld with a chip and hammer. This is where you have that horrible, toxic employee that maybe you're afraid to fire because it's hard enough to find people and this person's been with you forever and they're a great worker, but they're horribly toxic to everybody else around them. They're the ones that's not only going to leave your company, but perhaps they'll leave the industry. And we can't afford for more people to leave the industry. So when we get together and we look at some strategies to keep the people that you have and also create the type of culture where other people want to join you, that's the conversation. Because you know what, it has been a weird couple of years. Between mask mandates, I actually fell. I can't believe, we all know that April 1st is April Fool's Day, right? So I'm on Facebook scrolling, and I knew about it in the morning. I'm on Facebook scrolling, and I see a friend of mine on a plane without a mask on. He's like, it's so nice to be able to wear a mask, to not wear a mask on an airplane. I'm like, that's awesome. And then I actually wrote back, what airline are you on? Lisa, it's a federal law, for goodness sake. And it wasn't until April 2nd when he fessed up as I knew that, oh, I can't believe I did that. Anyway, with all of that being said, it's been a weird couple of years. And one thing that we're probably not getting out of this pandemic, of course, is you're on mute, Bob. But what we're really missing is that basic human connection, which again is why amidst everything that's been going on, we still come together as an organization. We still want to reconnect because this is the thing that we've been missing. So you might be saying, okay, Lisa, who is this Lisa Ryan woman and why does she go around the country talking about employee retention and gratitude strategies? Well, I'm actually born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. We were talking about this yesterday with a couple people. I've never lived outside of Cuyahoga County, completely by choice. I love living in Cleveland. Of course, my husband Scott, he has lived in both Cuyahoga and Summit County. So obviously a man of the world. But I started my career as an executive recruiter. One of the few people on the planet who can say they sold their mother. Mom hated that job. But I said, Mother, you've got to stay there at least 90 days because I have a guarantee and I can't afford to give back the commission I made on you. Thankfully, Mother was there for 2.5 years. We were fine. From there is when I went into industrial sales, where the first job I sold electrical cord and cable over the phone into the maintenance environment. And then from there I went into 7 years in the welding industry and then healthcare. But what changed everything was in 2009 when I went on a fire walk. Any other fire walkers in the room? This is not accidental. You fire walk, woohoo! When?
6 years ago.
6 years ago, wow. Okay. And let's ask the two questions. So, did you get burned?
I did not.
Do you have any idea why you didn't get burned?
Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's real, because this is not a euphemism. This is a walk across a 12-foot bed of red-hot burning embers. And yes, it does look like that. So the thing is that was not my first fire walk. I did my first one in 1989 when I was 6, just in case you're doing the math. First one was powerful, because literally, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, when you walk on fire, you're like, I can do anything. But the second one was life-changing. Because as my friends and I were driving home from Chicago, we were excited, we were jacked up. You might actually say we were fired up. We also knew that unless we took some action, everything that we learned over those 4 days would go right down the toilet, and we didn't want that to happen again. So we opened up a Facebook thread. And every day we shared with each other people we met, experiences that we had, things that we learned. And one of my friends said, why don't we write down 3 things we're grateful for? Okay. Did that every day, held each other accountable. And it was that practice that changed everything. I was actually in medical sales at the time, and customers I hadn't talked to for months were calling me, hey, can you come in and sell me some stuff? I'll be right there. There were 2 large facilities I'd been calling on for almost 5 years that closed effortlessly. I noticed the difference from my husband, who was becoming more verbally appreciative, and believe me, it wasn't because I was keeping the kitchen any cleaner. All of these things were happening, but the only thing that I had changed was that practice of gratitude. So that's where the research began. And I've read hundreds, if not thousands, of white papers and books and attended programs to see, is gratitude more than this feel-good emotion that we ascribe to it? And I found out that there was. One of the first books I read was called Thanks by Dr. Robert Emmons. He's a PhD professor at the University of California at Davis. And he took a random group of students, divided them into 3. The first group, he had them write down the things they were grateful for. The second group, all the troubles, hassles, things that bugged them. Third group simply recorded the day's events. They were the control group. Well, after 10 weeks, the gratitude group was 25% happier. You might be saying, Lisa, how do you know they were 25% happier? Well, because when Dr. Emmons presented his findings, he did so in a pie chart, and you know pie makes everybody happy. No, for about 10 weeks before the survey, he had them write down like headaches and stress levels in relationships because he wanted to separate the chronically happy people from, let's just call them the chronically crabby people, and he saw that 25% increase. The gratitude group exercised on average an hour and a half more per week than the other 2 groups. They complained less often. Wouldn't that be nice? They had fewer physical ailments. So if we look at the gratitude research, people with autoimmune diseases, people with neuromuscular diseases actually fare better with the regular practice of gratitude. And when we think about what happened over the last 2 years, getting back to being able to find the good no matter what is going on is a life-saving exercise. They were more happy, joyful, enthusiastic. And then Dr. Emmons interviewed the people associated with the gratitude group to see if they noticed any difference, and they did. They found that they were much more nice. They were nicer to be around, more emotionally available. So I did my own research. Posted a question on LinkedIn. And the question was, how do you incorporate gratitude and appreciation into your business? Okay. Phil, how do you incorporate gratitude and appreciation into your business? Would you say that's an innocent question? Yeah. Now this is BT. This is before trolls, where you could actually post a question on social media and get a nice, respectable response. And that's what I was thinking I was going to get. I got lots of responses. But the first one threw me for a loop because it was written in all caps. So as I'm reading this, my brain is saying, you don't need to incorporate gratitude and appreciation into your business because people are just going to take advantage of you anyway. I had no idea what to do with that. So I emailed her back. I said, I'm really sorry that you feel that way. She responded, that's okay, big girl now, moving on. Well, I am a glutton for punishment. And I wanted to find out the rest of the story, so I emailed her one more time. I said, this might sound rather silly, but if you would take my 30-day gratitude challenge, and for the next 30 days simply write down 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for, and at the end of the month, let me know how it goes. She emailed me back, lowercase. Thank you so much for being so positive. I'll do that right away. Who are you, and what did you do with that grouchy woman? So sure enough, we stayed in contact, a month goes by. I emailed her, so how's things going? She said, it's weird. She said, I haven't been feeling that much difference, but recently when I went on vacation and I was around some friends and family I hadn't seen for a while, they noticed the difference. So it makes no difference if you believe any of these soft skills, essential skills work. If you'll walk out of here with one idea that you commit over the long term to bring back to your place of business, you may not notice the difference, but other people will. And it does start with you. Because there is way too many times that we look at employee engagement as something we have to do. Another article on engaging my employees. What do I have to do now? Or you put it as a check mark. It's so much more than that. And when you can find the good. But I wanted to do my little disclaimer and my caution is that in our time together, between this program and all the other programs, the programs that you had yesterday, you have a list of ideas. I know you're taking notes and you're going to go home with all these ideas. And when do you want all of those ideas implemented? Yesterday. And what are your employees saying? Oh no, that is Adam just came back from a student CD. Let's ignore everything that he says for the next 2 weeks until things go back to normal, right? So look, it's happened to you before. So that's the thing, pick one thing, and maybe sometimes that starts with an apology approach. Because maybe you haven't been really good telling your employees that you appreciate them being there. And if the first time I go up to Dave, I'm like, hey Dave, thank you so much for being, and I have never thanked Dave before, he's gonna be like, oh no, what does she want? Yeah, are you dying? So instead, I say, Dave, I have not been letting you know how much I appreciate you, the work that you do around here, and I'm going to be better at noticing things. Now Dave knows that it's me and it's not him. That it's me trying to change my ways. But there's way too many times, again, we walk out of here with ideas, we try it for a week, that didn't work. It's like because your employees don't trust you. So picking one thing, and no matter what, keeping on with that's where you make the difference. And it really all comes down to 2 words. And these are 2 words that you've been hearing since you were a little kid when it comes to expressing appreciation. And those 2 words, of course, would be? And those 2 words, of course, would be?
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. This is the only acceptable response to the words thank you. Because what do you hear instead? What do you hear instead?
Chick-fil-A.
What's that?
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A. My pleasure. Okay. Well, what about things like no problem?
Yep.
No worries. Yep, just doing my job. It was nothing. When somebody says thank you, they're giving you a gift. And when you say it was nothing, you're taking that gift and you're rejecting it. We complete the cycle of appreciation, meaning that thank you begets you're welcome. And you might be saying, Lisa, really, that's not a big deal. When I say no problem, it's really not a problem. When I say no worries, there's nothing to worry about. Here's why it is. It's not you, it's your brain. Your brain doesn't process small words. What do I mean by that? When you say no problem, my brain is saying problem. What do you mean there's a problem? When you say no worries, my brain is saying worries. What should I be worried about? When you say you're welcome, when you say my pleasure, and you already said it, because my pleasure is also an acceptable response, but every time I talk about my pleasure, people say, Lisa, every time I say my pleasure, it feels like I'm at Chick-fil-A, which of course is a registered trademark in the training process of Chick-fil-A. How do I know this? I tweeted about it, the cow tweeted me back. I like this now. So it's your turn, and this is the silliest thing that you guys are going to do in the time that you are here, because this is Lisa Ryan's soon-to-be famous thank you, you're welcome activity. It looks like this. You will turn to the person next to you and you will say thank you. She will respond, you're welcome, thank you, you're welcome, thank you, you're welcome, and then switch. Thank you, you're welcome, thank you, you're welcome. 3 times back and forth, do that now. Come on back. And you don't have to raise your hand, but did a few of you find that your you're welcome muscle was a little rusty? I actually had 2 women sitting next to each other at a program. One said thank you, the other one said no problem. Did we just not talk about this? So these are the things. Does it take any extra time to say you're welcome? It just takes a little bit of thought, and it's not an IOU. These are the things that we do for ourselves to complete that cycle of appreciation. And it really all comes down to 2 words. What's your gratitude strategy, or as I like to call it, your gratitude. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to get lots of comments from you as well, because when it comes to the ideas that you're doing, you might be kind of thinking, well, that's a yeah, duh. When you do something exceptionally well and it's easy for you, you're thinking, yeah, duh, everybody knows how to do this. And yours may be the one idea that people start furiously scribbling down because they can see it in their business because it came from you. So here's 8 strategies. And the first one I'd like to start off with, we already talked about, don't make this a flavor of the week. Figure out what is going to be best for you. You can have lots of ideas, but make sure that you prioritize them so that you're picking the one that you're going to get really good at and make that commitment to. And you know what? And maybe that commitment is, I'm going to start some kind of gratitude practice. Because when I can find the good in my life, and now I'm feeling better from my health standpoint, my relationships are better in the home front, and it makes it easier for me to bring that person into the workplace. But the first thing is, stop saying it's the money. It's not about the money. Is money something? Absolutely. And are wages going up? Yep. I mean, when you're hearing that Target, for goodness sakes, is paying $24 an hour in some markets, you know that wages are going to go up. Again, we were talking about this yesterday with unemployment. You had people that were making $8 to $12 an hour in their job, and at the height of unemployment, we're collecting $28 an hour. So they not only do they not want to go back to that 8 to 12 hours they were making before, but they've built their lifestyle around that. So just know that salaries, hourly wages are going up. And people will work for less money if they're happy. And you may have seen this before, because the thing is, when you have happy employees, they believe that everywhere else is a really awesome place to work. So one of your competitors or somebody down the street or an Amazon plant, woos them over. And they leave you and they realize that it's horrible. And now they want to come back to you and they are going to take less money for that. Would you, can I just give you the microphone? Because you're my example.
All right.
Sean is actually an example. We had a really great conversation yesterday about this, about how he left a job that he was making more money for a job where he's really happy. So again, after marketable wage, people want to feel connected, they want to feel happy. And you're going to tell it better than me.
Yeah, I mean, it all speaks to culture. And my boss here, because he is.
He did not pay me for this opportunity.
He will actually tell you as well that he was retired, right? And he didn't have any particular plan to get back into the industry. and the company that owns Glass Coatings and Concepts, my close friend, company that owns Glass Coatings and Concepts, Shepherd, the Shepherd family creates a super inclusive, employee-involved environment that was just so attractive that, yes, I took a job that paid less money, but I'm happy. I'm extremely happy there. And it's so important, you know, you know it was important because you always have, you know, your wife telling you, you know, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and she told me, you know, you're a different person since you started that job. You know, you are happier, you are, you know, not bringing work home with you. You know, it was worth it. You know, we had to make changes in our budget, of course, but it was absolutely 100% worth it to be in a culture where you're appreciated. So.
And it was significant. There was an article just a couple weeks ago that said in order to woo away an engaged employee takes at least a 20% increase in salary. But to woo away a disengaged employee, you can get it for next to nothing. So these are the things that we're looking at. How do we create that culture? You know, if you have a smaller business, maybe it's because of the family environment that you have there. That you as an owner, you as a leader, know everybody's name. Know a little bit about them. You're able to walk through the shop and say, hey, how you doing today? Hey, how you doing today? Because when you just do those little things, if I say, hey, Phil, how you doing? And he goes, and I can ignore Phil and just say, okay, he's having a bad day. I got stuff to do. Or I can say, you know what? You are not yourself. What's going on? Now, Phil knows that not only do I know his name, but I care enough to ask that question. That's the connections that we want. And when we can do that, people will work. And not that you want to be like that Applebee's guy that sent in case you didn't hear it, it came out, went viral this week. One of the franchisees from Applebee's put out an email that basically said, because gas prices are so high, let's pay our people less because they're going to need to work more hours to put gas in their car. Thankfully, Applebee's corporate came back immediately, fixed the situation, fired the guy, and is doing their PR about that. But again, there's something about money where it is a measuring stick. You know, we feel that we're more successful when we make more money. However, again, if it was all about the money, people would be working at Target or they'd be working at Amazon for, you know, if you figure you're working not only signing bonus, but $20 to $40 an hour at Amazon, and they have 101% turnover. If it's about the money, everybody would be working there. We would get our stuff even faster than we get it from Amazon. All right, so it is not about the money. Listening to your employees. When it comes to having access, you know, especially we talk about in the industry and the graying of manufacturing that we need to find ways to attract younger talent in. And so you have people coming to work for you that maybe they've never been in the industry, they have no background whatsoever, but they see the world differently. And they want access to you. Because millennials and Gen Z have had access to authority since they were little tiny kids. I remember me growing up, it was my first job inside sales where I was selling electrical cord and cable. I was working for a company called Premier Industries in Cleveland, Ohio. It was started by Mort Mandel in the 1940s out of the trunk of his car selling fasteners. So here I am, I'm 23 years old, we're having our company picnic in the parking lot, and Mort Mandel was there. I was a 23-year-old little fangirl. I'm like, thank you so much for, I'm so excited for working for you, and thank you so much for having, I don't know, I was just blathering on like a 23-year-old fangirl does. By the time I got back to the office was a Twitter, and this is way before Twitter. Because when I got back to the office, people were saying, why did you talk to Mort? What did you say to Mort? What did he say to you? Because what I should have done was I should have asked my boss, who asked his boss, who asked her boss, is it okay if Lisa talks to Mort? Because that's the way business used to be. It's not that way anymore. Because think about it, when we were going on vacation when I was a kid, my parents would say, hey, we're going to Florida. These days, it's like, it's your turn to pick where the family vacation is, Jan. Where do you want to go this year? So it's a different level of communication. Yes, the younger generation was recognized by their parents, trophy generation, blah, 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 all of that. What does that mean for you? That means that these are generations that have grown up their entire time with feedback. And your once-a-year personal performance review isn't cutting it. Managers don't like giving them, and employees don't like hearing them. But they want that feedback, and they want that access to you. So when somebody, you have a brand spanking new employee, they just are on the first day on the job, they've been there for 2 weeks now, and they come into your office and say, you know, Josh, I know that I'm new with the industry, and I know you've had your company for 30 years, but I'm seeing some things that I think you can make some changes. If Josh, and he is doing the perfect thing right now, he's not blinking, he's looking right at me. If there was an eye roll involved in this, I would have shut down and probably put together my resume and left. Now, am I going to come up with a world-changing idea after my 2 weeks in the industry to Josh? Probably not, but there might be a seed because I see the business differently. I see technology differently. I see the way of looking at things differently. So just sitting down and listening to your employees, because they see that, number one, they know their job better than you know their job in a lot of cases, but it's just seeing how they see the world differently. Any questions, comments yet before I move on to the next ones? Because the next ones I'm going to have more interaction with hearing from you too. One-on-one meetings. This one is probably going to be the writer downer for y'all. The stay interview. Show of hands, who does exit interviews? Okay, about half the room. Okay. Don't you think that's a little late though? Hey, why are you leaving? Anybody do stay interviews? Oh, look at this, about 10% of the room. Okay, so who had their hand raised? All right, tell me about your stay interviews. How do you do them? What are some of the things you ask?
Mine are probably more black and white, straightforward. I think if somebody is thinking about leaving or interview, call them to the conference room, sit down, just try to put it on the table, be straightforward, understand what you're looking, what's the concerns, what's the issues, what can we do, what can we address. Feedback tomorrow.
Yeah. So sometimes when you hear through the grapevine of sitting down and having that and seeing if there's anything that can be repaired before that final decision is made. What about from an example of that you're having these interviews with everybody, that you're sitting down on a regular basis or at least asking people those questions? Yeah, okay, so how often do you do it, and how did you start?
Occasionally we do it, maybe, I guess we just started doing it more actively with all the employees, and we call it Meet to Learn, and it starts from the top down with the CEO, and we ask people, why do you work at Shepherd rather than someplace else? What can we do to help you achieve your goals for the future? Just questions like that. Why they think it's a great place to work, things we could do better, things we should do less of, maybe more things we're not doing, stuff like that.
And notice George's phrasings too. It's like, what do you like about working here? That now is fodder for you attracting new people to your company. Because you're hearing the words that from your employees, these are the reasons that I like working here. And everybody's going to have bad days. But the other thing that George didn't say is he didn't say, well, what don't you like about working here? What resources do you need? How can we help you? If you were me, what changes would you make? If you were me, what differences would you make? and sitting down and having those conversations. At one of my other programs, there was a gentleman, he owns 3 plants, CEO of 3 plants. And he went and had one-on-ones with every single employee. Now, the first time that he did it, they told him pretty much exactly what they thought he wanted to hear. You know? It's like, okay, we don't know why Manny's asking these questions. But what Manny did is he acted on some of those ideas. And they said, he's listening. So the second round, when Manny went around, they were a little bit more forthright. Because again, they're still going to test you. Still going to test you and see. But that third round, and now, it's like they feel completely safe. Because when it comes to listening, it's the thank you for sharing attitude. No eye rolls, you're not fighting, you're not justifying, you're not doing anything but listening and saying thank you for sharing. And one of the easiest ways to get started is tell me 3 things that you like about working here. Tell me 3 things that you would change if you were me. But you can put together your own list of questions and just having those one-on-one meetings. Because the thing is that your employees see you differently. When you walk through the shop and you acknowledge them by name, and maybe ask them about their kids, or ask them about, their kids' sports, or whatever it is, they realize that you're paying attention. Do you have to memorize things about every single one of your employees? No. But especially at the beginning, there's a book, it was popular in sales in the 80s by Harvey McKay called Swim with the Sharks Without Getting Eaten Alive. And Harvey talks about the McKay 66. And these are 66 questions that over the period of time that Harvey would find out from his customers. Everything from favorite restaurants to political affiliation. I would not go there. But over time, you get to know the people. So maybe you have a tickler file, maybe you have in your CRM, there's always the all about me sheet. And I'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to recognition. But finding out how people like to be recognized. Because there are some people that love public approbation. They're like, woohoo, give me the plaque, I don't care about the cash. And other people are like, if you get me up on that stage, I will never forgive you. Right? So we just look for ways. Did you have a question?
Just wondering, do you think it's more important to have these conversations one-on-one rather than as a group? I was under 15 employees, and we do a weekly team meeting. We take 15 minutes every week. We started off with successes from the previous week, and we ended with start, stop, continue. And that's where it's open to the floor. People have an opportunity to not call people out individually, but to make suggestions about, hey, here's an idea, I have something you could start doing to improve things, or something you could stop doing, or something we recently started or stopped and continue doing. And find that when one person participates, we can start to get more people participating. And maybe it's more important maybe to have those confidential one-on-one rather than as a group.
Both. Because with what you're doing now is great because everybody's having the same conversation. And again, it's a positive, especially when you have people who are remote and you're doing Teams meetings and you're not all in the same room. Because when I'm in the same room, it's like I can read the body language, I can see what's going on. With Zoom, I'm assuming you have everybody on camera.
No,
Yeah.
we're all there.
Oh, you're all there. I'm sorry, I thought you said Teams meetings. Oh, the team, not Microsoft Teams. Can you tell that I have been doing a lot of virtual programs lately? Okay, so so 2 aspects of that though. Number 1, especially the kudos of having that be public, absolutely. And maybe for those people that really don't like that, that making a big deal of them, if you sat down one-on-one and had that meeting with them, that would be, extra special. But a lot of times when there's an issue and somebody brings it up to the whole group, but it's really about one person, everybody in that meeting knows who the one person is. So in that case, when you know that there's an issue about the one person, of having that conversation before, and then maybe prefacing it, and again, it's going to depend on the group, the mood, all of that kind of stuff, but making sure that it doesn't come down to like a pointing that everybody knows that that's who you're talking about.
Like what kind of frequency do you suggest for one-on-ones?
You know what, again, it's going to depend, the frequency for the one-on-ones is really going to depend on your culture. With 15 people, I mean, you may do, what's your name? Jason. You may do lunch with Jason once a quarter, for those 15 people. I would do it more often from the 5-minute check-ins maybe, but what you're doing, and that's a weekly meeting with your team, that communication is great, because again, everybody's on the same page. So there may be something that again, coffee with the boss or lunch with Jason or whatever, where you're having some one-on-one time. Because what we also do is we have different conversations with employees when we're breaking bread with them. And I had one of my CEOs actually say when he would take his employees to lunch, the only rule was we don't talk about business. Did some people break that rule? Yeah, because they're not really comfortable. You're going to have employees who aren't comfortable talking about all their personal life with you. And maybe that's the first time, maybe the second time they'll feel a little bit more comfortable. But these are things that we do, according to, one is our comfort level, but I wouldn't do that, on our personality, but I would also step out of my comfort zone occasionally with that too. So there's lots of different ways that you can do it. And one part that may be really helpful is just to ask your employees, how often do you think we'd like to meet? Because you have some of your employees that be like, you know what, I'd like to have 5 minutes of your time once a month. And there'll be other employees who think that even that is micromanaging, and they'll be like, you know what, let's just meet about every 6 months or so when we need to. And you still want to touch base with them. Hey, how you doing? What resources do you need? How can I help? But, base it on kind of asking, getting a feel for, you're paying attention when people are going around as far as who's getting recognized, there's some different things you can do. Any other questions? Empathy. This is one thing that, especially in industry, that we have to get back to. Because employees are going through really tough times. Remember back at the beginning of the pandemic where everybody was going, I don't know anybody that has COVID, it can't be real. Well, 2 years into it, we can safely say that we've all been touched by that. And we don't know where it goes with immunocompromised people at home, kids, are they in school, are they out of school, are they wearing masks, are they not wearing masks, elderly parents. Now, we don't know what happened to that employee 10 minutes before they walked into your shop. But what we can do is, again, look for those personal connections. Make resources available. Because when somebody has a physical disability, that's kind of easy to see. But right now, with the rates of depression going up and the mental challenges that people are having, this is where our empathy muscle needs to come out. Because we don't know, making employee assistance programs available. I had one of people on my podcast talking about, they did a whole program called Let's Get Comfortable, Make It Okay to Be Awkward. That having awkward conversations with people about mental illness, about depression. Because too many times we look at people who are actually depressed because of everything that's going on, the amount of isolation and loneliness and everything, and we're just like, hey, smile on your face. Why are you so sad all the time? What's up with you? Because we don't see that level of empathy, and we're reaching out to our employees. And being flexible. I know in a shop environment, in a manufacturing environment, people need to be on the line running the equipment. I know that. And I also know that flexibility is becoming an expectation with today's workforce. And the only thing that we all in this room have in common with, Elon Musk and Bill Gates is that we all have the exact same amount of time. It is the one thing that we have that we can do as a gift to our employees, whether it be flexible scheduling, whether it be remote work, hybrid work. The people who have been working at home for 2 years, all of a sudden you're going, oh no, you're coming back 5 days a week, and they're like, no, I'm not. So I want to find out from you as far as things that you've maybe changed during the pandemic, where, before the pandemic, none of us believed that anybody could successfully work from home. But we've incorporated some different practices from a flexibility standpoint. Maybe it's hours, maybe it's days of the week, maybe it's remote working, hybrid working. So who's done something that they started the pandemic and then kept it up? I know somebody's been flexible. No, really? So everything, all the timing for your schedules is exactly the same as it was before? Yeah, okay, Wayne.
I'm retired, but I have a close group of friends that I've known for 50, 60 years maybe. And we started having a monthly Zoom call, and we just talk about things happening around us, and we continue to do that now. So that's certainly something new. I've still kept the friendships going with the people. We didn't work together, but we played together. So, and we got people from California, from Tennessee, from Michigan, from Ohio, and we get together once a month.
So that flexibility is staying connected with people that you may not have had any connection with before. In your shop environment, especially if you have, let's see, by show of hands, who have at least part of their team working remote or hybrid? Okay, very few. All right, just a couple. All right. Keeping in mind that even with that, we still want to have that flexibility, that everybody is coming in. Maybe it's, every Wednesday at 7:30, every Friday at 10, whatever, that whoever wants to jump in and join in is welcome. I actually did, Wayne, a really similar thing with my family. It was in end of March, beginning of April 2020. I told my mother, I'm like, let's jump on a family Zoom. My mom's like, I don't want to do any of that type of technology stuff. And instead of letting her off the hook, I said, nope, we're doing Zoom. So the first time it was me, my mom, and my stepsister. And that was fun, so we did it again. And then my other sister joined. And then joined again. And just like Wayne, who has people from all the different time zones, we opened it up to our international family on Saturdays at 1, Wednesdays at 7:30. We have family Zoom. And we have people all the way, we have London, Barbados, Trinidad, Canada, and then in the States, at least 10 different states. On our biggest call, we had 19 people. But my family knows that every Wednesday at 7:30 and every Saturday at 1 o'clock, there is that time to get together. And I talk to my aunt and uncle, I don't know, maybe once a year in Boston. I've been seeing them twice a week for the last 2 years now. My one niece announced her pregnancy on Family Zoom. That was a pre-COVID baby. So Isla is a year and a half now. And then my cousin Jennifer decided they were going to have a COVID baby. So Sophia is now 2 months old. We had the showers and everything. So again, look at that flexibility. And if you are meeting with Microsoft Teams or Zoom, of making sure that it's not just getting down to business. Whoops. Oh, wow, that was fun. Getting down to business, but it is sharing some of those personal stories as well. Having those one-on-ones are providing training. This is so important, and not just skills training for the job that you do, but looking at that employee holistically. You know, some people will say, Lisa, if I spend all that money on training, people are just gonna take all that money and leave anyway. Okay, so what if you don't invest in your employees and they stay? So I was speaking at an HR conference, and I asked the question, I said, what do you do to invest in your employees? And a woman raised her hand, she said, we give every employee $1,500 a year to invest in whatever personal or professional development they want. You could almost see the heads of the accounting managers exploding. As they're saying, Lisa, we have 500 employees, we don't have that kind of money laying around. And I said, what percentage of your employees actually take advantage of it? So think about this. You're given $1,500. You can do whatever type of training you want, from technical skills training to underwater basket weaving. You can use it however you want. $1,500. What percentage of the people took advantage of that? Oh, I always love my cynical people. Dave's like single digits. Anybody more optimistic? I'm giving you $1,500. What percentage?
40%.
40%. 50%. 90%. You were right. Oops. 3 to 5%. And this is almost across the board. You guys are in that 3 to 5%. Because you've invested in yourself to be here, to spend 2 full days getting education that your competitors are not in this room. You're part of that. So when you have those employees coming up to you and they want training, those are your future leaders. We pay attention to those. I spoke for AED, which is the Associated Equipment Distributors, and they actually had a Tech of the Year where people would nominate their techs for this big award. And so the one year I spoke there, they had 9 techs, all young men that came in, and they were so excited, and they brought their family. And then you have some people going, well, that makes them totally poachable by everybody else. It actually made them less poachable, because they felt seen, because they felt valued, because they felt recognized in front of their peers. They got all dressed up. They brought their families with them. So we look for ways to recognize people. And we can do that in lots of ways. We can do lunch and learns, where there's so much information out there. And lunch and learn, basically, you go buy some sandwiches, put in a YouTube video, find something, and people will say, well, Lisa, we've tried lunch and learns, they don't work. Did you actually ask your employees what they want to learn? And be okay, especially at the beginning. Maybe it's not specifically industry related, but they can all have the same conversation. And again, building those. When you're sending people to training, of meeting with them afterwards. Josh, you were just at that training yesterday. What were the best ideas that you got from it, and what do you think that we can implement? Because there's too many times that Josh goes to training and it's like, I just expect him to do something with it, but I don't know. For all I know, Josh cut out and went to lunch instead of going to the training. But if I sit down and I ask Josh, how was it? What did you like? What can we use? Now, not only is he getting the benefit of repeating it and teaching me, but now I know that my investment paid off with him. The other thing about training is it's not sending people to training. It's investing in your people. Because I've done a lot of public seminars. Those ones, you get the flyers in the mail, and then you send your people, you're going to training. And what we refer to those people in our programs are prisoners or hostages, because they don't want to be there at all. I had one lady, it was a program on employee accountability. So who is in that class? all the employees that aren't accountable. So I have this woman sitting in the front row and she's seething. You can feel the hate emanating from her. We went around the room and introduced ourselves, and I'm like, what brings you here? My boss made me come here. Whew, okay. I know my hostage is in the front row. This is going to be great. So I put my disclaimer on that I do with a lot of my training, and I looked at her and I said, you know what? I don't care if you take a single thing home from this program that's going to make you more productive. I don't care if it makes you more profitable. I don't care if it does a single benefit for your employer. But what if, in our time together, you walked out of here with some skills that can help you with your personal life, that can have you better relationships, more happiness, less stress? Would that be helpful? You could see her melt. And at the end of our day together, she took both of my hand in both of hers and thanked me. So that's what you're doing with your employees. You see them and say, I want to invest in you. I work with community colleges and their workforce development, and I had one young man in my training. It was a part of a leadership certificate training. And he was probably late teens, early 20s, but he was so proud to be there. Because his boss not only invested in the certificate program for him, but gave him the time during the day to do this. Nobody in his career before that had done that. This is what, when you're looking to attract new people to your company, we have to find ways to help them to be better tomorrow than they are today. So again, I want to find out from you, what are some of the ways that you are investing in your employees as far as training, on-site, off-site? You see the different things, ongoing training, in-house, creating a learning culture, bringing in a trainer, shameless plug. The thing about bringing in a trainer though, is that I could come in, and Dave can actually have a meeting the day before, and he can give me an entire script of exactly what he said at that meeting. And I can come in the next day and say exactly the same thing, and they will hear it differently. So sometimes look at those outside resources for people that your employees don't see all the time. Public seminars, taking them to trade shows. Taking them here so they can go around the exhibit hall and see the technology and meet the vendors and see who's in the market. Because again, think about it. Now they're going out and hanging out at the bar next Friday with their friend. They're like, yeah, I just got back from Columbus. Really? Why were you there? Well, I went to a trade show there, learned. Your company actually paid for you to go somewhere? How do I work there? So it becomes a recruiting tool because other people see that you're investing. And the money that you are spending on your employees is tiny compared to what it costs you when they leave. Okay, so again, you can volunteer or voluntold with investing in your employees. What are some of the things you're doing?
Your example of $1,500 to spend on whatever you want, our company does that. You can go take classes in basket weaving, whatever, or something related to glass and ceramics, and they reimburse you. So it's a great way that you feel appreciated. I could go take a class on music appreciation if I wanted to, and they just feel that if you become a better, well-rounded person, you're a better employee.
And so what do you think is the percentage?
I don't know, George. Do we have a number? I really don't know. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes, and George may have an exceptionally high number of percentage-wise, because when you create a learning culture, then you have a higher percentage. But if we're just looking at, because we're all busy. I mean, I can imagine that if I did a quick poll here and I asked who has way too much time on their hands and you're just bored, silly, and looking for stuff to fill your plate. Yeah, I don't think so. So when you have people that want to go above and beyond, and again, and it doesn't matter if it's basket weaving, it's Dale Carnegie. I had one of my clients, they had one of his employees went to that Dave Ramsey, the financial university. And then what he did is he allowed that employee to set up little financial wellness programs for the other employees. So that's the other thing. You can use the people you have in-house, find out where they shine. Because what happened with that guy is now he was seen differently with a different level of respect because he was helping people. And also it was helping him to get better and stronger. Okay, so who else? Investing in people.
I have taken employees to trade shows, but I recently had a discussion with a newer employee about he's really doing well, he's reliable, coming in on time every day, has a good demeanor, every challenge, task I give him to do, he succeeds. So I got an audio book, The 1 Minute Manager, and I said, why don't you listen to this on your commute, and then when you're done with it, let me know, and we'll sit down and talk about it. And so he did that, and he enjoyed it.
See, sometimes you're sitting down with employees who have not picked up a nonfiction book since high school. And when Jason basically tells this new employee, I see something in you, and I think that you would benefit from this. And he didn't just hand him a book called The 1 Minute Manager, and because if Jason had just done that, that employee would have been like, what did I do wrong? Why did he give me this program to listen to? But what Jason said is then you and I will sit down and talk about it so I can get your thoughts on it. You may just have opened up a whole new world for him if he wasn't familiar with nonfiction and getting better. And now you're building that thirst for knowledge. Because a lot of times, and you see this on Monster and Indeed, when you have your younger employees, when I was an executive recruiter, if somebody was at a job for fewer than 5 years, I'd be like, job hopper. On Indeed and Monster, they tell people, if you want to grow up and increase in your career, you got to do it somewhere else. So now you see people at a job for 5 years, they're like, you've been there for 5 years, what's wrong with you? Can't you go somewhere else? So when Jason is giving that level of investment in the employee and allowing them, now this person knows that he can get ahead with Jason's company instead of having to figure out, I'm going to go somewhere else so I can increase my skills. Anybody else training, investing? Yeah.
So in our line of work, it's not uncommon for a new young manager to be promoted because they were a good press operator, right? Well, that's great, but you don't come with the management skill set. We stumbled across a grant at the local community college, and we got $55,000 to be able to bring in a trainer in-house. We tailored the training from good communication, decision-making, root cause analysis, and a few other topics, and brought this crew and middle management in, sat them down, provided some lunch, and gave them a few days worth of training in order just to give them skill set to become better decision makers and help empower their people and grow. So look to your community colleges as well, because there's grants out there. There's programs that they're more willing to spend the money to help develop their people.
And I'm so glad you said that, Nevin, because a lot of times what we do is we take our best floor person and we promote them to our worst new supervisor. And all you have to do is watch an episode or two of Undercover Boss, and you know the perception of management. Okay? Because now they're over this boss. And if you're not familiar with Undercover Boss, basically the boss or owner of a large company puts on a bad wig, dyes his teeth brown, and goes undercover. I don't know why they dye their teeth brown, but it just seems to work, to see what really is going on in their company. And a lot of times what it does is it comes back to training. But looking at having those conversations, and again, some people are nervous as far as sending their new supervisors out for training because they think that, well, they're going to be out into the wild and somebody might poach them. No, they're going to be in a safe room, because if they just got promoted and they have questions, they're like, oh, I just got promoted. If I ask that question, then Sean's going to wonder why he promoted me, so I can't do that. But you put them in a safe environment with other people who are new supervisors too. Now they can figure out those foundational skills that they need to connect with people.
What Devin had talked about, I'm involved with a nonprofit in Cleveland, in my own small business. I was amazed at what the SBA has, Lorraine County Community College, Baldwin Wallace College, most of it free, but you're also hooking up with people like you who will present other presentations, help the businesses out, and I see very, very few companies taking advantage of it. And we're paying for it as part of the US government. So.
Yeah. Well, and the nice thing about community colleges and workforce development is that getting into those programs, the JVSs that are in your area, do you know that you can custom make new employees? I mean, when you build relationships with your local community college with their workforce development, you can say, you know what, these are the classes, these are the skills that I need, and they will work with you. And guess what? Then you're showing up at the community college, you're showing up at the JVS, you're meeting, maybe you're doing a webinar or something for them. They see your face. Guess what? They finish up with that certificate program. Who are they going to join to work for? You. Because you're the one that they saw, that they built a relationship with. Otherwise, you know, everybody else, all your competitors are waiting for these people to get out with their certificates. It's like, sorry, in today's job market, those people already have jobs. So you connect with them earlier. So yeah, you have some great resources available. The next thing we're going to talk about is recognition. And again, I know that this is the #1 way to connect with your employees. And we're not talking about, oh, that Lisa Ryan woman said, I need to thank 5 employees. All right, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Yay! But we're looking for ways, you know, of course you have milestones, and one thing that I would encourage you from the milestones is that if you're starting at 5 years, start at 1. Start and really celebrate that employee's first year with you. And then maybe it's 3 years or 5 years or something, but that first year is a lot more, because when new employees join you, they can't even think about that. I'm not going to be here for 5 years, but they may be able to see themselves for a year and then they have a good experience. But we look for ways to catch people, and one of the things too is of that all about me sheet, of finding out what employees like and personalizing it to us. So now, what's your favorite candy bar? Mr. Good Bar. Okay, so nuts, chocolate. Okay, so Mr. Good Bar. So if I came to you and you knocked it out of the park and I gave you a Hershey bar with almonds, it's fine. You know, I mean, basically the same bar except for almonds instead of peanuts. But what if instead Nevin knocks it out of the park and I give him a Mr. Good Bar? He may not even remember filling out that form 6 months ago, but there's something in his brain that says she's paying attention. Or think about the other thing that we do all the time is we go to the store and we get a couple $100 worth of Starbucks gift cards, you know, and I give a Starbucks gift card to Jamie, and Jamie's like, I don't like Starbucks, I'm a Dunkin' Donuts guy. And I'm going to give a card to Adam, and Adam's like, I don't even drink coffee. And I'm going to give a card to Paul, and Paul's like, woohoo, Starbucks. I've just made 1 person out of 3 happy. Prepaid Visa. Yeah. Well, and the thing is, again, it's finding out what your employees like, what kind of coffee they like. I mean, you go to basically any grocery store and they have 42,000 gift cards you can choose from. And you also know that for those of you who have larger companies, you have some managers who are really good with recognition and some managers that aren't. So if you're giving them all a selection of gift cards to give out in the time of catching that person doing things right, you know, make sure that they're personalizing it, and also make sure that they are giving them out. But specifically, instead of saying, you know, what is your name? Sabli. So, again, if I am recognizing Sal personally, at the moment and being specific. Because if instead I just said, hey, great job, Sal, she's going to be like, what do you mean? What was so great about it? But I said, Sally, the way that you handled that last customer on the phone who was so upset, and you have such a magical way. Now, Sally knows that I am paying attention, and I'm catching her in the act of doing things well. I had one person at one of my programs come up to me afterwards and said, Lisa, when I do something wrong, I get recognized 100% of the time. And when I do something well, it's rarely noticed. So these are the things, catching people in the act. And one of the other things that, it's always funny again when somebody in the audience says something and they're like furiously scrolling. But on the interview, what this woman did is she asks the potential candidate, they just get into conversation like, what's your favorite restaurant? Or in this case, she asked, what was his wife's favorite restaurant? And guess what? When they made the offer, they sent a gift card to his wife's favorite restaurant and thanked her for being part of the decision. So it's your creativity and saying thank you. Am I telling you should say thank you to your employees for doing their job? Well, yes, I am. Because when employees feel valued and appreciated, those companies with engaged employees are 141% more profitable. We have all of these things that go on with that. We've seen that, the Gallup information has it, 30% of your employees are actively engaged. These are the people that are making you more money than you're actually paying them. 50% of your employees are disengaged. Basically, they're doing enough work so that they don't get fired. And you have that bottom 20%, the horrible, toxic people who suck the life out of the room when they walk in. And who gets the most attention? Your rock stars and your problem children. But what if you went to that middle group? And what is your name? Dave? And I go to Dave, and Dave's in the 50%. Not a rock star yet, not a problem child. But I go up to Dave and I say, Dave, I really appreciate the fact that you're always here. I can count on you. Thank you. Dave would be like, felt pretty good. I had some more of that. And now I've just given Dave the acknowledgement that he needs to potentially move into rock star status. Because think about it, this bottom 20%, they're looking for recruits. And that middle 50% is the best place for them to find. So we pay attention, compare people to how they are, their efforts, their best efforts. Don't compare your average people to your rock stars. When you see somebody going above and beyond, be specific in that. I do have a gift for you. This is my book, Manufacturing Engagement, 98 Proven Strategies to Attract and Retain Your Industry's Top Talent. All you do, you can take a picture of the screen, or you can take out your phone and text the word engage to 66866. If you are international, send me an email. I found out the hard way that doesn't work in Canada or anywhere but the United States. What will happen is you will get a text back from me that says, please send me your name and your email address. First name and email address. The reason why I do that is if your email address is mike.brown@abc, it's easy for me to say, hey, Mike. But if your email address is hotbikerdude@yahoo, I don't want to go there. So you will get a note back from me that says thank you. And for those of you who are smarty pantses and you respond with you're welcome, yes, you will get an error message because I only bought the word engage, not you're welcome. We can also connect on LinkedIn. If we're not already connected, I do not sell on LinkedIn, but I am always posting articles, videos, my podcast episodes on there, which is the Manufacturers Network podcast. So with that, let's take a look at when you implement this, what your new workplace reality looks like. Those frowns, you can now feel that happy culture. People are laughing and joking and being nice to each other. That confusion is now more, that frustration is more joy. You're not seeing the turnover. People have that work-life balance. You have friendships instead of that competition. For people not showing up, you have them showing up on time. They feel recognized. They're putting in that work-life balance because we've looked at that, and you no longer have those silos, you're having conversations. When you look at these things, and we talked about 8 different strategies today, this is how you keep your top talent from becoming someone else's. We've gone through and we're hopefully on what we're seeing the other side of the pandemic, but none of us have the luxury of not paying attention to and keeping the people that we do have, because that's going to help us in the future to build, grow, and increase our business. I'm Lisa Ryan, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much.